to the template.
Yeah, absolutely, and as we discussed, they'll probably try and also activate the UN Security Council if they can, although they know that they will meet resistance.
That's going to be difficult.
Yes, and a few other interesting things that I noticed in the course of the conversation, that, the Indian Home Minister, among the justifications he gave for revoking Article 370 was to deal with the challenge of terrorism. And the US has to factor that in whatever response that it gives, because on the subject of terrorism, it has been taking a very, very strong stance. And so if this is a step that India has to take to deal with terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, which has gone on for some time, that has to be kept in mind. The second aspect is that although Pakistan would be objecting pro forma for its own constituency or to preserve its position to the reorganization being done in India in the context of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan itself has in the past carried out reorganizations in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It separated Gilgit and Baltistan from the rest of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and calls it the northern areas, and has tried to integrate that more closely with Pakistan directly, whilst maintaining the fiction as if the rest of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir has some kind of a different status. So there would be a little bit of a dilemma for them, and lack of consistency.
Talk about not having the locus standi to question India on its own reorganization.
When they've done something similar in the territory that they illegally occupy. Then another interesting dimension is that although Pakistan Foreign Minister has indicated that they would be raising the issue with Alice Wells when she's visiting, when Prime Minister Imran Khan was visiting the United States, in his public comments, Foreign Minister Qureshi had criticized Alice Wells by name as being among the two officials in the US administration that had in the past blocked Pakistan's access to high levels in the US government. And of course, interesting now that they're saying that raise it, the issue with her.
Well, that's a very interesting fact that you bring to the fore, which means that today Alice Wells, part of the US administration for coordinating policy on South Asia, who's in Islamabad today, who's in Pakistan today, and where Pakistan is using that as an opportunity to complain about something which is frankly not under its purview. And you have the Foreign Minister of Pakistan who hasn't said the best of things about that particular representative.
Just a couple of weeks ago.
And that too a couple of weeks ago.
And then another thing, I think Pakistan will also be caught in a bind because they would like to show to their own people that with the developments that are happening in India in the context of Jammu and Kashmir, that they're taking some action. They may want to activate a little bit along the border. But the US will not want them to be distracted from the support that the US needs in Afghanistan. And therefore, there will be a certain requirement of Pakistani troop presence on the western side of their border. And if they don't respond to the US request to deal with that and try and generate some activity along the eastern side of the border, then the US would be disappointed with Pakistan, and any support that the Pakistan may expect from the US may not be forthcoming. So I think Pakistan itself will be caught in a bind, and we have to see how all these dilemmas play out.
The expression on thin ice comes racing to my mind. That's where Pakistan is, because while they can do all they can, call out to the American administration, call out to the Organization of Islamic Countries, some of the countries part of it, they themselves are on thin ice, have a lot to answer when it comes to terrorism brewn on their soil. So that's as far as Pakistan is concerned. We continue to understand, what this historic move from India means for Jammu and Kashmir. Because keep in mind, it's not just about Article 370 and Article 35A. There's also a bifurcation of the state. Jammu and Kashmir is now a separate union territory, and Ladakh is now a separate union territory. And that is probably even more crucial than Article 370 and Article 35A, because at the end of the day, what has plagued the region is bad administration, isn't it, Mr. Ratan Srivastav? All these years, the question of revoking Article 370 or 35A didn't come up because it was political convenience at the heart of it all. But the other problem that was never looked up was the fact that Ladakh was considered over 55% of the land area of the state of Jammu and Kashmir and came with its own benefits, whereas the economic benefits of Jammu and Kashmir, the cash crops, the agricultural base that Jammu and Kashmir gives was just completely not on the top of mind of anybody.
Right. So, for any sustainable economic development and industrial growth, we need to have certain enablers which are imperative for that. One, as we just spoke about, was the skilling of the local population. The other, of course, is education, development of the development of R&D, investment in R&D, in science and technology. Now, if a university, a private university in Kashmir wants to set up shop, today we do not have the situation where they could have bought land. So now we have so many Kashmiri boys, students going to universities in Noida and Greater Noida, even down to Bangalore to study. So tomorrow we could see these universities buying land, setting up universities, so that the education and the benefits of knowledge could percolate to the local Kashmiri population. And
also, in that sense, the demographics of Jammu and Kashmir is you're talking about another state with a huge youth population, the power and the potential of whom has remained dormant all this while. And all of this means that the unemployment rate in Kashmir goes down, and all this is keeping in mind the long term. It's not going to happen in a few months from now, but in a few years from now, certainly.
See, absolutely. So the unemployment rate would go down once we have education coming to their doorstep, and they are going to get soft skills, they are going to get vocational skills. For example, if we have an ITI over there, we could train all kinds of vocational training can be given. We can have universities which can give structured growth, structured education. We could have MBA institutes. We could have engineering colleges opening over there. All these are enablers for the economic growth.
Right.
So once we have an educated local population, then industry can use them. The whole issue is about generating employment. Once we generate employment,
right,
the issue of this security situation would automatically take a back seat.
Right. Ratan Srivastava, talking about security, we were just discussing with Mr. Arun Singh about, how the security situation is the reason why even the US, will have to think twice about the kind of response it gives to Pakistan at this point in time. And in that sense, help us understand how will this reorganization help in dealing with the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir better than what we have so far?
I couldn't get you. Can you please repeat again?
Right. The question I'm trying to ask is that this reorganization of the administration of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh can help us understand in terms of how it will improve or impact the security situation.
Right. So definitely now we have is going to benefit the security deployment in the valley, because being Ladakh as it is, Ladakh has never been giving much of problems to the security forces in the region. So we can have Ladakh, which could possibly be taken. The security situation can be tackled by the paramilitary forces and other allied forces, and the security forces can possibly focus more on the trouble spots which are in the Kashmir Valley and across the border. So that would help on a focused approach for stabilizing the security situation in the valley. Also, there are some trouble spots in Jammu which could see more of a concentrated approach by the security forces, and it will definitely free up resources for tackling the security situation, because these two different states, as you said earlier also, and it should happen, once we have two UTs coming into the country, we would have the integration of the police forces into the national police system. So like we have Danix cadre, we could possibly have a cadre which would have some kind of policing coming in from outsiders as well, while the constabulary and the local maybe subordinate services would stay with the locals. So I think all this would definitely help in stabilizing the security situation in the valley, and of course in certain troubled areas of Ladakh, freeing up the security forces in Ladakh to be deployed elsewhere.
Right, Mr. Ratan Srivastava, they're joining us on the perspective, and we have Mr. Arun Singh as well. Gentlemen, stay with us. Let's now discuss more about the road ahead. Well, the road ahead can be challenging. Now, the decision to abrogate Articles 370 and 35A involves legal, political, diplomatic and security issues. For one, New Delhi needs to win the hearts and minds of the people in Jammu and Kashmir. Some in the Kashmir Valley have already made known their opposition to the removal of the special status to the state. Domestically, New Delhi will need to generate much needed goodwill among the locals by creating jobs for the youth, attract foreign direct investment, and encourage the private sector to set up shop in the valley. Good governance will be a key aim as decades of violence has left a void in terms of development of the state. Free and fair elections will be right on top of the agenda too. Today the legislature stands dissolved and the state has been put under the governor's rule. Delimitation of assembly constituencies to make it more representative is not off the table either. On the diplomatic front, New Delhi will need to manage and preempt international reaction at once. Sources tell WION World is one that diplomats would soon fan out to key world capitals to explain to them the circumstances leading up to the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A. The sources also say that India has factored in Pakistan's reaction to various world fora. Security is another concern, as I've been telling you. New Delhi has already sent thousands of additional troops to Jammu and Kashmir as a contingency measure. Steps have also been taken to counter terrorists as designed. The government is also seizing the need to counter any legal challenge to today's decisions. Right. Mr. Arun Singh, I was asking about the way the world is going to view this, because this is clearly, anybody and everybody who's viewing this will know that this is a beginning. This is a step that is meant to usher in a whole new future. And in that sense, getting countries and companies around the world to invest in Jammu and Kashmir will be key. And in that sense, so while you build up goodwill and good faith among the people of Jammu and Kashmir, it's also important to communicate to the world around that, now Jammu and Kashmir is not the way it used to be before. Now you can start looking at it as a possible investment opportunity when it comes to India.
That would certainly be one dimension, but I think in the immediate what the Indian government and Indian diplomats would need to focus on is to make sure that the international assessments and responses are mindful of India's position, sensitive to India's concerns, and broadly seen as being supportive of or accepting the reasons that India has advanced for the steps it has taken. And I think that's why I'm sure most of the diplomats based in Delhi would be summoned for briefings if they have not already been summoned. Our embassies and ambassadors in different countries would be reaching out. Special envoys may be sent to some particular countries. So I think that message has to go across. That is, it is something that India has done for its own internal reasons. It has something that India has done to deal with the challenge of terrorism. It has something that India has done to be able to promote development. So based on that, and I think countries in their responses will be sensitive to their interests and equities in India. And that having been said, in today's context, there are challenges that countries are facing in different parts of the world, which are of more primary concern to them. For the US is a challenge in Afghanistan, what they're dealing with Iran, with North Korea. In Europe, they have their own challenges in terms of rise of right-wing forces, in terms of the challenge of Brexit.
In terms of immigration.
Immigration, and then you have the challenge in the Persian Gulf. So I think so long as we are able to contain the situation on the ground and explain our purposes clearly, I think there'll be a broad understanding internationally.
And that communication is crucial, isn't it? The timing of the communication before you see any kind of an untoward reaction by any country that's that's insensitive. Indian diplomats, as we've been telling you, are fanning out across the world to help the world understand why India had to do what it had to do. On that note, let me take this across to Mr. Ratan Srivastava as well, who's also joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Ratan Srivastava, this is the time when India is going to take out to make the communication, first of all, clear, because not everybody in the world is going to understand the importance and the meaning of this all and why and for what reasons it's being done. So that's the first step right now. This parallelly with containing the situation, because even as India explains to the world why it's doing what it's doing, it needs to make sure the situation at home is completely under control.
Yes, so as Ambassador Singh just said, there is the aspect of containing the damage that possibly can be caused. Not damage, I would say, the noise that Pakistan would be making. And also, India has very, very close relations now with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, and of course in the Muslim world. So one of the things that India may like to do is this, to convince the Organization of Islamic Countries, which had allowed Sushma to come and speak, much to the chagrin of Pakistan, and Pakistan did not participate, as you know. So one of the prime, I would say, actions that India would be doing is to reach out to the Muslim world and to make them understand why we have done and why it needed to be done, so that Pakistan possibly cannot move there and try and gather some sympathetic votes or maybe get a statement out of them.
Right.
I'm not a, but I would say that this could happen.
Right. Stay with us, Mr. Ratan Srivastava. We're also now being joined by Mr. Soli Sorabji, former Attorney General of India, joining us live from India's capital, New Delhi. Mr. Soli Sorabji, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on WION World is One on this extremely big news day. I want to begin by asking you, moments ago, the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament, passed the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill. I want to begin by asking you your initial thoughts on the timing of the Indian government's decision.
Well, the timing was quite sudden. I don't know why it had to be done so suddenly, because that raises misgivings in the mind of the people and creates a sense of panic. I'm in favor of what's been done in the Rajya Sabha, but the manner of doing it is something which I don't approve.
And if you can help us, tell us more, why exactly do you disapprove of the way it was done? Because, you know, the right now, the popular sentiment at least is that this Article 370 and Article 35A were never meant to be permanent. They've been allowed to exist way past their use by date, and it required political will to get something like this done for the betterment of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
But in any case, that will could have been ascertained by discussion in the House. Why do it so suddenly? What was the need? What was the necessity? Was there any influx of terrorists in Kashmir? Was there any Pakistan intrusion? That's the reason. I don't know, there may be so, but I don't find any sensible reason for doing it in such a hurry.
Mr. Soli Sorabji, we've seen the security situation in the valley go from bad to worse. We've had, you know, this year in February, we've had the Pulwama attack. We had Uri in 2016. We've seen the build-up, and we've seen Pakistan not doing anything different from what it has been doing all over the years. And India, in a sense, having to deal with more and more insurgency. You know, India needed a better grip on the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir. And more importantly, Jammu and Kashmir's economic benefits to India has been kept away, and the benefits of a prosperous India has been kept away from Jammu and Kashmir for too long now.
Well, what you're talking about, Pulwama and all that, when did it happen? I want to ask one question. Suppose there was discussion in the Rajya Sabha, properly, that the will of the people could have been ascertained. You may not have accepted it, but you could have at least... Look, Jammu and Kashmir is part of India, correct?
Yes.
And why alienate some people of Jammu and Kashmir by doing it in such a sudden manner? What a sudden manner, what was necessity? This gives the wrong impression.
Right. So you're saying that...
really alienates people rather than bringing them in the mainstream.
So you're saying that you're with the decision...
Carry on, go on.
You're saying that you're with the decision, but you're not with the way this decision has been executed, and you're afraid that this sends the wrong message.
Of doing it. Correct. You understood me correctly.
All right. How else do you think this would have been possible?
Sorry?
How else do you think the government should have done it?
Come again?
How else do you think, in which other way? Because this needed...
They could have done it by having a discussion in Parliament in the normal course, and by house arrest of people like Mufti and Omar Abdullah and Farooq Abdullah and others. What was the need for that? Was there any need to arrest them? So this sort of a thing, the manner of doing it, I'm not happy with. Not with the content, not what's been done. Of course, Jammu and Kashmir being part of India, laws which apply to the rest of India must apply to them also, I agree. But why this guy? Why the house arrest? What was the need for that? I mean, you can just build up, Pulwama happened, when did it happen, what's all that? This gives a very wrong impression and this alienist people. You should really win over the people and say to the extent possible, see the point of view of the government in doing this. That's what I mean to say. A correct decision but wrong execution in one sentence.
A correct decision but wrong execution is the view coming in from Mr. Soli Sorabji. Mr. Soli Sorabji, I just want to ask you one thing. You know, you've seen a lack of from the way the Indian governments of the past have handled this particular particular issue of Article 370, Article 35A, which has been allowed to wallow in ambiguity all these years. The grey area was used to fuel political ambitions from Jammu and Kashmir all these years. So in that sense, when you do arrive at a decision, it will, in one way or the other, run roughshod over one thing or the other. But it has to be said at this point in time that it needed to be done, and it was, it was a question of better late than never.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, but I don't agree with that. The manner of doing a correct decision is equally important. A correct decision executed in a wrong manner, in a hasty manner, in a manner which alienates the people, and particularly I haven't got an answer, why do you keep these people in the house arrest? Are they criminals? Are they Pakistani agents? Omar Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah, these are people of Kashmir respect, admire, Mufti. So these are the excessive steps. That's where the government has gone wrong. That's my personal view.
Right, Mr. Soli Sorabji, former Attorney General of India, joining us on this broadcast. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out to be with us here on WION World is One and sharing your perspective. We also have Mr. Glenn Carle, American writer and former intelligence officer, joining us live from Boston in the U.S. Glenn Carle, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on this big news day on WION World is One. Big decision from India. While we had Mr. Soli Sorabji just question the mode of execution, nobody at this point in time is disagreeing with the intent of the execution, and more importantly, the fact that whether it should have been executed or not.
Well, I'll defer to the Indian experts and officials and American officials on the wisdom of it, I guess, from a domestic perspective. Internationally, in politics, of course, we know that possession is 9/10 of the law, so it's a hard thing to challenge. But I would expect, as the Indian government clearly does, that there will be a response from Pakistan, and the response almost surely, I would guess, would be an increase in support or actions of terrorism. That is the one way, really, that the weaker party in this conflict can respond, and Pakistan always has. So I think that it increases tensions, certainly. Whether it's wise or not, I will defer passing judgment on, but from the American perspective, this plays into what really are the only two concerns that the Trump administration has, since it can't see beyond a week or a month, maybe, and that is, how can the United States get out of Afghanistan, and how can the United States manage its arguments with China. And from those perspectives, the step in Jammu and Kashmir may make matters more difficult for the United States.
Right, we have Mr. Arun Singh, a former Indian diplomat, also with us on this broadcast. We also have Mr. Ratan Srivastava, a defense expert, also with us on the broadcast, along with Glenn Carle, who is joining us live from Boston, the US. Glenn, I will come back to a quick question. I want Mr. Arun Singh to react to what you just said. Mr. Arun Singh, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think one important point was made, that perhaps one response Pakistan can do is by ratcheting up terrorism. Whereas the counter response in India would be that Pakistan has always resorted to terrorism against India in Jammu and Kashmir, and therefore, and from time to time it has ratcheted it up. So that's something that perhaps can be anticipated and handled, and with the sort of deployment of Indian forces in Jammu and Kashmir, as well as along the border and line of control. So the preemptive deployment was certainly to keep that aspect in mind. And I think the other aspect that we have to watch out for is that till the mid-1960s, and maybe to some extent till 1971, the Kashmir issue had been raised at the United Nations. Since then it has not been. And because India's firm position has been that with the Simla agreement, the matter has been taken off the international agenda, and it is something only for India and Pakistan to address bilaterally. And again, that from India's perspective, what needs to be addressed is the vacation by Pakistan of territory illegally occupied by it in Jammu and Kashmir. And I think what India needs to make sure as things evolve is that there is no internationalization of the issue. Pakistan will certainly take it to the OIC. And as one of the experts mentioned, India has now very good relations with many of the Islamic countries, including Saudi Arabia and UAE. But it may not be, while we convey our position, it may not be worth our while to put too much effort in
trying to
preventing
convince the world.
The OIC.
Okay.
Because the OIC normally adopts statements and resolutions that are very strongly piloted by any of its members. So long as any of its members is interested in a statement, the rest of the members don't really come in the way. Therefore, I won't be surprised if Pakistan comes out with a statement through the OIC, and India's position should be, as it has normally been, that OIC has no relevance to this issue, it has no locus standi, and therefore whatever OIC says is of no consequence. So India needs to just state that position, move on. What it really needs to do is prevent any internationalization in the framework of the United Nations Security Council. So long as that doesn't happen, India's position is protected.
All right, let me take this back across to Mr. Glenn Carle. Then, Mr. Glenn Carle, we have Alice Wells, a representative of the U.S. administration who takes care of South Asia in Islamabad today. And we were just reminded by Mr. Arun Singh short while ago that the Pakistani foreign minister did not have the best of things to say about Alice Wells just a couple of weeks ago. And today, they're speaking to the U.S. Through Alice Wells.
Well, you're doing what all of us must do, which is to seek coherence, I think, in American positions, and that's a difficult thing to do in this administration. I think that President Trump's ostensible offer to negotiate the Kashmir issue was a ham-fisted bid on his part to win Pakistan's support or favor in America's efforts to withdraw from Afghanistan. But Trump's statement was immediately countered by the professional bureaucracy and experts in foreign policy by reiterating American support for the Simla Agreement and bilateral movement or a bilateral approach to the Kashmir issue. To find coherence between a formal official and the White House is a hard task.
It's going to be a hard task, but right now the U.S. is under the